Example of these workers' heads spinning. Friday before last, right? Friday before last, at the Small Business Administration, employees received emails notifying them of their terminations. Then on Monday, another email said the initial notices were a mistake. We get news of yet another inexplicable, chaotic move, seemingly bent on undermining everything we as Americans hold dear. Whoops-a-pandemic. Thankfully, we all know that Donald Trump is a steady hand in a public health crisis. I tell you what, folks, have we tried deep frying the birds in bleach, baby? Hear me out.
Trump's latest foreign policy idea: Ukraine should apologize to Russia for being invaded. In the next few minutes, I'll show you exactly how Stephen Colbert turned this absurd claim into comedy gold. We'll break down Colbert's funniest jabs, including why he said Trump's geopolitical knowledge comes from a cereal box, and how his foreign policy looks like it's written in crayon. Spoiler alert, even other Republicans think Trump's lost the plot this time. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now back to the video. Can you imagine planning a birthday party without inviting the birthday boy? Well, that's exactly what our orange friend just did on the world stage. Trump sent Marco Rubio to Saudi Arabia for Russia-Ukraine peace talks, but somehow forgot to invite Ukraine. You know, just the country whose territory is being invaded and whose future they're supposedly discussing. Minor detail, right? Stephen Colbert couldn't believe the absurdity of this diplomatic disaster. It's like planning a surprise party and forgetting the guest of honor, he joked on his show.
Rehiring people on Tuesday that you fired on Friday does not scream government efficiency. Speaking of chicken, up in Washington, our government is getting spatchcocked by Elon Musk and his post-pubescent pink-slip troopers, which coincidentally are also the Secret Service code names for Trump, Elon, and Don Jr. Now, naturally, the federal workers in their path of wanton destruction are experiencing anger, chaos, and confusion.
Except the surprise is that you're planning to give away half their house to the neighbor who's already camping in their living room. Colbert didn't hold back, describing Trump's peacemaking strategy as about as effective as using a fork to eat soup. When reporters asked Trump why Ukraine wasn't invited to talks about their own country's future, his explanation was truly mind-boggling. He basically said he wanted to keep it a secret, because nothing says "I've got your back, ally," like completely ignoring your existence in negotiations about your survival. It's diplomatic ghosting at its finest. European leaders are looking at America like we've grown a second head, and honestly, can you blame them? Germany's chancellor was reportedly so confused by the news that he checked if it was from The Onion. France's President Macron supposedly asked his staff, "Is this real or did someone hack the news?" They're wondering if America has completely lost its diplomatic marbles. Even Republicans are distancing themselves from this plan faster than teenagers fleeing a family dinner when dishes need washing. Senator Mitt Romney called it embarrassingly naive, while Liz Cheney described it as dangerous and reckless. When you've got the GOP backing away from your ideas with their hands up saying "not mine," you know you've hit rock bottom in the diplomacy department. Colbert really went to town on this one, comparing Trump's Ukraine-less peace talks to planning your own birthday party and not getting an invite. Except instead of missing out on cake and ice cream, Ukraine is missing out on deciding their own fate. It's like Trump is saying to Ukraine, "Don't worry about what happens to your country. We'll text you the details later," Colbert quipped to thunderous laughter from his audience. What's even more absurd is that Trump seems genuinely confused about why people are upset. In a rambling interview, he insisted that excluding Ukraine was actually genius, because sometimes you need to talk about people when they're not in the room, right? Because that's always worked out well in international diplomacy. Just ask Neville Chamberlain how well talking about Czechoslovakia without them present worked out in 1938. The comedy gold continued when Colbert suggested that Trump's understanding of international relations could be written on the back of a cocktail napkin with room to spare. Trump's diplomatic understanding is about as unified as a bowl of alphabet soup, Colbert joked as his audience roared. And unfortunately for Ukraine, all the letters spell out Y-O-U-L-O-S-E. But wait, there's more, because excluding Ukraine from peace talks about their own country wasn't quite absurd enough. Trump decided to take his diplomatic disaster to the next level by actually blaming Ukraine for starting the war. That's right, the country that was invaded is apparently responsible for being invaded. If Trump's logic were a board game, it would be called Blame the Victim Dictator Edition. The audacity of this man knows no bounds. Not only did he exclude Ukraine from peace talks about their own war, but now he's pointing fingers at them for having the nerve to get invaded. Trump told Ukraine, "You should have ended it 3 years ago. You should have never started it." I'm sorry, what? Let me check my calendar here. Has Trump discovered time travel? Because last I checked, Ukraine didn't invade itself. This is like telling someone who got punched in the face that they shouldn't have put their face where that fist was going. Pure genius. Colbert, being the voice of sanity in this absurd situation, made the perfect comparison. He said Trump's logic was like blaming those wicked hobbits for stealing that ring from Sauron. For those not familiar with Lord of the Rings, that's basically like blaming the mouse for annoying the cat. The mental gymnastics required to reach Trump's conclusion would win gold medals at the Olympics of nonsense. The timeline confusion is particularly spectacular. Somehow, Trump believes Ukraine should have ended a war 3 years before Russia even started it. Unless there's a secret DeLorean parked at Mar-a-Lago that we don't know about. That's not how time works. Maybe in Trump's universe, countries should just predict when they'll be invaded and surrender preemptively to save everyone the trouble. Colbert didn't hold back, noting that Trump's understanding of the conflict is about as deep as a puddle in the Sahara. That's being generous. A more accurate description might be as deep as the condensation on a cold Diet Coke can in Trump's hand. But wait, it gets better. Trump then had the audacity to describe President Zelensky as a modestly successful comedian. This coming from a guy whose greatest contribution to comedy was being the butt of jokes on Saturday Night Live for years. Talk about the pot calling the kettle orange. At least Zelensky intentionally made people laugh rather than accidentally. The accusations didn't stop there. Trump claimed Zelensky somehow manipulated the United States into spending $350 billion on a war that couldn't be won. Yes, apparently Ukraine has magical powers of persuasion, forcing America to help them defend their sovereignty against an unprovoked invasion. What a scam! How dare they ask for help while their citizens are being bombed? It seems Trump gets his geopolitical insights from the same place he gets his spray tan, a discount store with questionable quality control. His understanding of international relations appears to come from reading the back of a Lucky Charms box, where the marshmallow shapes represent different countries, and whoever has the most gets to invade the others. Colbert brilliantly summed up Trump's explanation as being so twisted it would make a pretzel jealous. That's putting it mildly. Trump's logic is so convoluted that if you tried to follow his reasoning, you'd end up chasing your own tail like a confused puppy. Experts have also weighed in, pointing out that Trump's claims about Ukraine being responsible for the conflict are factually incorrect and misleading. But why let facts get in the way of a good victim-blaming session? That would be too reasonable, and reasonableness isn't exactly Trump's brand. Reasonableness isn't Trump's brand, but his peace plan for Ukraine might be his most unreasonable creation yet. Ever wonder what kind of diplomatic genius tells the victim to apologize to the burglar? Trump's solution has all the strategic depth of a kindergarten playground negotiation. Give Putin what he wants, and maybe, just maybe, he'll stop taking more. When it comes to negotiating peace for Ukraine, Trump's brilliant strategy involves Ukraine making major concessions to Russia. You know, the country that invaded them in the first place. Colbert perfectly captured this absurdity by comparing it to telling a burglary victim to apologize for having such a tempting wallet. Because obviously, when someone breaks into your house, the correct response is to hand them your TV and apologize for owning nice things. But wait, it gets better. When asked what Russia would need to give up in return for Ukraine's territory, Trump went full Magic 8 ball with his response. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, was his actual answer. Wow, such diplomacy, such strategy, such complete and utter vagueness. With negotiation skills like that, I'm shocked Trump hasn't been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize for wishy-washy diplomacy. Colbert didn't miss the opportunity to mock Trump's approach to dealing with Putin. He joked that Trump is treating the Russian dictator like a naughty puppy who peed on the carpet. Who's a good boy? You want Ukraine? You want it? Go fetch. It's the perfect analogy for Trump's strange submissiveness to Putin, treating a war criminal like he's an adorable pet who just needs a treat to behave. And speaking of Putin, Trump can't stop gushing about the Russian leader's supposed 90% approval rating. Colbert pointed out the obvious flaw in this logic. Of course, Putin has high approval ratings when the alternative is a one-way ticket to Siberia. It's like bragging about winning a race when you've tied your opponent's shoelaces together, and also they're running on broken legs. Not exactly a fair competition, but Trump seems impressed nonetheless. The whole peace plan has dangerous historical parallels that Colbert highlighted. Appeasing aggressive nations by giving them territory hasn't exactly worked out great in the past. Remember that little incident called World War II that started after European powers tried giving Hitler parts of Czechoslovakia to keep him happy? Spoiler alert, it didn't work then, and it probably won't work now. In perhaps the most ironic twist, Trump has taken to calling Zelensky a dictator who refuses to have elections. This coming from the guy who tried to overturn his own election loss and incited an insurrection when he didn't get his way. The hypocrisy is so thick you could spread it on toast. It's like a serial bank robber criticizing someone for not balancing their checkbook properly. Trump's entire approach to foreign policy seems to involve a strange combination of playground logic and authoritarian admiration. His idea of diplomacy is essentially, just give the bully your lunch money and maybe he'll stop punching you. And his understanding of democracy apparently boils down to elections are great when I win them and rigged when I lose. The sad reality is that while Trump's foreign policy ideas are laughable, the consequences for Ukraine and global security are deadly serious. Having a former president and current presidential candidate suggest that the solution to invasion is surrender sends a dangerous message to autocrats worldwide. It's like hanging a giant "invade me" sign on democracies everywhere. And there you have it, folks. Colbert nailed it when he compared Trump's diplomatic skills to bringing a spoon to a knife fight. The former president's version of peace is basically telling Ukraine, give Putin whatever he wants and send a thank you card afterward. Even Republicans are running from this hot mess faster than rats from a sinking MAGA hat. The real kicker here is seeing Donnie lecture an actual wartime leader, while his own foreign policy expertise appears to come exclusively from the backs of Trump-branded cereal boxes. Dictator flakes. They're great for destroying democracies. What's next? Solving climate change by suggesting we all blow on the planet at the same time. World leaders are literally checking if they're being pranked by this stuff. If Trump becomes president again, we might need to replace the red emergency phone with a clown horn.